Basically, you're enriched through different bloodlines, and any day that you're down or feeling less than, just know that you are enriched with the bloodlines of strong people. Look for the positive and just move forward. I am Karen Hughes White. I am the co-founder of the Afro-American Historical Association of Fauquier County. Well, it offers a full resource center, and that resource center is comprised of a museum which is laid out in a timeline of history. So we start in Africa, 900 to 1500, go through the early period of the slave trade into Jamestown, 1607, and then fast forward to 1619 with the first Africans coming once once we passed Jamestown time frame. 1662 with the institution of slavery on forward into a change with President Obama's stay in the White House. Other than that, we have an auditorium for programs which we host here. And during COVID, of course, we were doing them online. We have a reference library, and we have a full library for genealogical and local history for research. We have a website with many searchable archives, photographs, and things of that nature. And most of all, we have a area of where people are able to come and to share their stories. And it is for the community. It is the community. It wasn't my initial idea, but the co-founders brainstormed. I was vastly involved in my genealogy, and she and I, from 1990, started doing genealogy together, and she had met with the national chapter of the Afro-American Historical Society down in D.C. And from that point, they became very good friends to us, and they kind of mentored us. And we thought about the possibility of becoming a chapter under them, but due to treading new waters, it was more difficult to start a chapter under someone. Just that organization. The inspiration came from doing local history, local genealogy, and realizing that it was a story that needed to be preserved and told, that was not just our individual family stories, but the stories of a people that I found to be inspiring and at the same time instrumental in understanding American history. Karen King Lavoie. Karen, I knew growing up, but I didn't really know Karen. She grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. She and her brothers would come back to the community of Morgantown where I resided, and they would come back during the summers and different times to visit their home farm. So I would see them, and then at one point I dated one of her cousins for a brief period of time, got to know her a little bit then, and then in 1980 we were both visiting a mutual cousin for her and his 80th birthday. We sit in the backyard and we commiserated. We shared all of our things that we were doing, and both of us came from the same community of Morgantown. As we'd find one of our ancestors, we'd find the other. And it was just instrumental in building this platform, or building the foundation of understanding our history. When one of us would learn of another source, we'd share that. She was still working at Pitney Bowes at that time. She'd take off from work on one of the weekdays, and we'd ride to Richmond together. We'd do things together. So it just it was just a story. I guess we started doing our individual research around 1980, mid 80s, 86 or so, and it just evolved from time to time. We wore out every record room where our ancestors were. Like for me, I would go into Loudoun, I'd go into Prince William, spend a lot of time at the Library of Virginia, Fairfax, the surrounding counties. So, and we became friends with the Hearthstone bookstore, and we used to sell their books for them at the national chapter's annual convention of the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society, where we're the Afro-American Historical Association. But we worked with some of those founding members as well, where we go into D.C. and work with them. So from the mid-80s forward to 1992 is when we actually started, and then 1992 we worked 5 years from a home office, and then 97 we were afforded a place here in the Plains. Well, the biggest change that I have seen is that we have suffered loss of our founding members and supporters, many of them, not all of them, needless to say. It has grown in size. It has grown through periods of history of time, where in the 90s some of the older residents of the county were concerned with us opening the doors to talk about our history. They were concerned for my safety and the safety of my children who were still in public school here. And I didn't understand too much of that concern, but as I continued to dive more into the history, then I understood their concerns, and much of that concern dealt with the mindset of locals doing Reconstruction. And I'll leave that at that point. And fast forward, our resources have greatly grown. We have gone from not having census available other than on microfilm to where you can go and look at Ancestry or Family Search. We are now a Family Search affiliate library here. We are on the national, we are a site for documenting the Underground Railroad. We are a facility. So it's grown leaps and bounds in understanding and making things available to the public. We have moved from a 1,400 square foot facility to a facility that's over 10,000 square feet. From every source available, from the U.S. records, local records, federal records. Many of them come from the Circuit Court record room. So there are 21 record types or categories in the Circuit Court of Fauquier County. So there are many historians that have abstracted information out. So we purchase the abstract books, and when we need the original source, we're able to go over to the county and pull those. We're looking at church records like the Baptist Historical Society, individual churches within the county itself that had members during the period of slavery. So we have at least 20 churches that we have abstracted the names of the people that were enslaved or that were free that held membership at those churches. We're looking at newspapers. We're looking at advertisements for runaways. We're looking at people being brought up on charges for allowing an unlawful assembly or migrating contrary to law. School records, school board minutes. We're looking at roll books, U.S. Census for the schools, the public school census. So that's just some of them. Military records on Fold 3, U.S. The archives. I don't think I've had a lot of difficulties other than trying to find records to validate oral histories. Now, I'll give you an example. My grandfather told us he had a brother. I knew he had a brother that was a twin, but he said he was executed. So I looked everywhere for this uncle. His name was Robert Hughes, and he was named after his grandfather, Robert Hughes. My great-grandfather was Wormley Hughes, but I could never find anything. 20 years later, I get a phone call from Cumberland, Maryland, from a group that were researching there, where was a lynching, and a man by the name of William Burns, who was my great uncle that we had been searching for, but he was living under assumed name. But because of a piece of paper that was in his jacket, and because of our research here and all of the things that we had available that people could find pertaining to Fauquier County and various families, they were able to reach out looking for us here as this possible descendants, and I could validate who our great uncle was. Other than that, one of the records that I would love to be able to find for Fauquier County is the cohabitation records during Reconstruction, where the military was supposed to go out and take the census of former enslaved people, the census of the parents and children, and it would give the name of the former enslaver and things of that nature, age, because many times there were children within a household that were born in different areas, different time frames, like there may be 3 or 4 different fathers, 2 or 3 marriages, and some illegitimate, and everything within that household would then become legitimate. So if we could find that for Fauquier, it would be truly awesome. Most of them that we have found or had access to were found within the county records in the record rooms, but Faukier's is not to be found there.
Do you have any idea where it might be?
I don't know beyond a shadow of doubt that Fauquier has one, had one, because when I'm reading the Freedmen's Bureau records, I saw letters where they were asking for help in doing this, but we do also have an oral history of where they gathered all of them together and did one big marriage ceremony and took the names down. So, you know, we have 2 different things going on here, but we have not been able to find Faukier's. The biggest thing is to continue to preserve and to make those records available. As we find different records, we always want to make them available to the public. Right now we are working on a project called Know Their Names, and we are trying to document the names of every person that was in Fauquier from its formation of 1759 through the end of slavery. Some people are listed by a given name, some people are listed as a slave or free or sometimes female or male. So we want to put every documented source out there available into a master database. So that is one of our goals, and then to acknowledge the history truthfully without bias one way or the other, but just straightforward, and to be warm and welcoming to people of all generations. Well, we would like to see it in a permanent position to where for generations, for future generations to be able to come and to learn of that history. We're working on a project in a little community that I grew up in of a one-room school, the Morgantown School, and we're trying to preserve that school because it is situated in a historic district, and it faces the church, which is still active, within walking distance of the cemetery where founding members of the church were buried, as well as teachers and students of the school. And it is a lovely community with houses and children, adults, grandmas, grandpas, still living in that community. So anyone coming to that area would be able to see a living history community and they're able to look at a moment in time. And that way it wouldn't be forgotten, but it would live on. You would see the home and visit the spring where children were taking pails to gather water for the school. My goal is to always start with yourself, with what you know, or what you think you know. So I would tell everybody, just get some pencils and a piece of paper. Telephone now, iPhone will work well, where we used to say tape recorders and things of that nature. Just go out with your phone and have an open mind, but start by writing down your information. Write your name, where you were born. If you don't know, ask a parent or someone. Someone in the community will tell you what your parents won't often. Start with yourself, get your siblings, and then step back. Look at your mother and your father. Write down their information. See where they were married and who their parents were, but get your mother and father's siblings down and their children, because they will soon be in history. So you want to get them and just continue to work your way back. Document where they went to school, if they were members of any type of organization or club, write that down. Where did you attend church services, if you attended church services? Where are family members buried? If you have family reunions, where are they? Where do you attend a family reunion? Do you have a particular day or something specific that you celebrate? And just keep working your way back. Once you get back so far, you want to kind of start validating some of those things. Then I would say go on to Ancestry or Family Search and start pulling those things. Document the county in which they live, and you'll be able to go to the county and start pulling records. Your birth, death, and marriages, many of those are on Ancestry now, where before I would have been saying you're going to go to the record room of the county and you're going to look for your vital records, birth, death, marriages. Then you're going to go to your probates. You're going to look at your wills. In your wills, you're going to find guardians. You're going to find wills. You're going to find appraisals and things of that nature. Look at your land books, your deeds. So you're going to see who is deeding property and things of that nature. And then you just kind of work your way back. And those are going to be your initial first steps. And if anyone was in the military, what branch, what time frame. So you're going to earmark or put in that search bar a few things that you're going to want to keep. And that's going to be your newspapers, Fold 3 for your military records, and then of course the U.S. Census. And I personally use Family Search and Ancestry as well as the others. And then of course, since I'm a Virginia resident, I'm going to look at the Library of Virginia because they oversee all of the county's records. So you can always go there. It is difficult, but the biggest thing is learning the history to know what types of records may be available to you. I was fortunate enough to work with a couple of historians, Dave Martin and Joan Peters, in 1995, to be able to work on Fauquier County's chancery suits. So the Library of Virginia, it was a grant, and they trained us in archival practice to flat file the county records and pull and place records in the right category of the records. So all the chancery suits were in one particular file, but they made a new file, a new category called Free Negro Enslaved. So anytime we'd find one of those records, we would pull that, give it a unique number, make a copy of it, put the original back in the right, wherever it came from, what record type it came from, but then the copy would go in the Free Negro Enslaved. And off hours, we index those records. So we have an every name index for those. So looking at those records, not really knowing what all they meant, but utilizing the black laws of Virginia that were abstracted out from the Acts of the General Assembly by June Guild and Hennings, Statutes at Law, we were able to understand court process So that opened a vast world of knowledge for researchers to be able to know that within the county records you're going to find more records. So those were the things that were afforded to us, and made our research easier, in the sense that we knew that where records were available to us, and we shared that information far and wide. We did not try to hold anything. Any opportunity we had, we shared the information with others. And quickly, people started researching more and more. And with Hollywood, with different movies, different websites, different things, people became more engrossed with learning who they were and finding their ancestors in a period of time. And then with each celebration a county or a state was doing, then you look at what were African Americans and where were they during this time frame. So many people come to us to look for inclusion within a celebration, and that's where we come into play to pull records. And that lends itself friendly to looking at a more factual history, in the sense of inclusive history. Yes, yes. Far as the records that are available, yes. And I find that whenever you find those records, you gather them. They're scattered. You need to gather them so that you, collectively, you'll be able to look at a more complete history, where there may be a group that's trying to save a schoolhouse. They're only focused on the schoolhouse. There may be a property owner that's looking at a historic property and they want to know about the enslaved people of that property. But you miss the mark because there's a history within the church, there's a history within the family, there's a military history, there's a history to resistance, a history to civil rights and freedom, integration. So until you pull every resource available, you're not getting a full picture. So our goal is to look and to document and to pull resources from every place available. I sincerely believe that Fauquier is unique in the sense that it will have a more complete history of a people in its entirety the more work we do. Because we have advocate researchers that have all along researched the European history with little regard to the free and enslaved people of color here and the indigenous people. There have been some that will bring in one or two names, but not of a people as a whole, to see how we interacted during different time frames. And that is our goal, is to make it available and not to highlight one and bring down another, but to look at it inclusively. And I think as we're able to do that, it will lead to more understanding and more humility and more healing. Just a little bit. Just mainly wanting us to focus on one period of time and not on another, or that didn't happen here, so why are y'all highlighting that? That was down south. And those are usually individual comments, or we may have a visitor that'll come in, or we had a visitor that came in and wanting to know, well, what exactly do you know about history? I have one for you, and which is totally out of our scope, because we're not looking at California or one person that was in a faith-based place in California. We may look at faith here in the county and know which people bridge from a white church during slavery into a black church during Reconstruction. So we're looking at bridging that gap, that divide, that time frame. And then you'll find where these two churches are now coming together for homecomings and different programs such as communion services and other things. And they share a common history. And being able to do that, it really shows the humanity of mankind. I think it's important for understanding because so many times we're led by false narratives and false understanding. It will greatly benefit not only children but adults as well, grandparents as well as grandchildren, when you're thinking of building strong people to understand how you're able to overcome different obstacles and not to give up but to move forward. Just looking at some of the people from Fauquier County, for example, when I look at the United States colored troops, and I look at all of the enlistment sites that people from Fauquier County enlisted in to fight for freedom during this time frame, it is absolutely mind-blowing to me because I'm wondering, okay, so these people were born in Fauquier, some of them were enlisted in the South, some in the North, some in the East, and some in the West. And when I say West, I mean all the way over West and all the way up North. And then I'm wondering how and when did they get there? And then when I find doing Reconstruction, there are people in different universities, different colleges. And then I find a little bit later there the people that's teaching at these universities. You know, so I'm looking at all of this and I'm like, wow, Fauquier is everywhere. It's such a strong history. And we need to be able to tell those stories. We need to be able to look at a county who is now less than 10% of African descent, and where at one point was over 50% African descent. So to be able to look at that and to be able to tell the stories of who were born and who these people were that have enriched lives all across America. And I was amazed when I did a study this past week just looking at our visitation to our website. We've had visitors from all 50 states. And that was just so powerful to me to know that people all over are utilizing our resources here. I think the most important thing is to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and think back to your great grandparents or great great grandparents and look at the individual bloodlines that enrich you. You can dwell on negatives or you can look at the positive traits that different people have left that have enriched you. And when you're feeling down, just know that you are important and you are cared for. Someone gave you birth, so now live it to the fullest.